There are a lot of different leftist communities out there. Socialists, Democrats, the Green Party, anti-fascists. But one commonly overlooked leftist group are the leftist anarchists. There is a popular anarchist content creator by the name of Dr. Bones, whom is pictured here in his iconic Soviet hammer and sickle bandana. Dr. Bones is known for being an articulate and challenging individual and has a decent community online. He's been featured in multiple collabs, has his own Patreon, and is pretty well recognized among anarchists. He is also apparently a horrible human being. This is Bon. They're a non-binary anarchist and activist online, and though we have interacted very little, I find them to be an intelligent and honest person. Recently, Bon has come forward about an affair they had with Dr. Bones, in which he got them drunk, coerced them into sex while inebriated, and unable to consent, might I add, and then continuously harassed them for extended periods afterward, including asking for nudes and messaging Bon after explicitly stating for Bon to not contact them anymore. Bon has provided screenshots, evidence, and has kept their story straight, even when responding to allegations of dishonesty brought forth by Bones. I do genuinely believe that what Bon has told us is the truth. There will be a link to all relevant Twitter threads on Bon's account in the description below this video. Feel free to read them yourself and come to your own conclusions. The following is an interview conducted on Wednesday between myself and Bon Temps over Discord. Please do your best to remain objective in observation of this interview. With all of that said, let's move on to the interview.
Okay,
Cool.
And we're live.
And we're live!
Good morning, Vietnam!
Alright, everybody. I've already recorded an intro to explain sort of what this interview was about, but if you'd like to introduce yourself formally to my audience, feel free.
Okay, so I go by Prosper Bonham. I am a writer for Gods and Radicals and an anarchist, so I do all sorts of fun things in my spare time.
Like planning revolutions.
Yeah, you know, just a casual thing on the side. So many to plan, so little time.
So, this interview is covering what went down between you and another noted anarchist by the name of Dr. Bones.
Yes.
You did a Twitter thread explaining that you and him had an affair in which he took advantage of you.
Yes.
What sort of pushed you to want to come forward about this situation?
So, in the thread, which I probably should have pulled up for myself to reread before I started this, so, you know, good job me. In the thread, like, I talked at the very end of it about how, I went to Florida, in a very spontaneous, unplanned vacation. One of my friends had planned a vacation before Christmas with her fiance, and then her and her fiance broke up. And so she was asking other friends of hers if anybody would like to go, and I had the free time, and I had the money to pay for gas and the wherewithal to drive 22 hours across the country to Florida. So I was naturally a prime candidate for that. So since this was the first time that I had been in Florida, where Dr. Bones lives, since the kind of like start of this happening in March, I thought that it would have been a good time to meet with him again in person and tell him, hey, I'm not really comfortable with this happening anymore. Can we part ways and not do this anymore? And then things kind of went a little sideways while I was in Florida, and I was like, you know what? I wanted to end this quietly and possibly even amicably, but now I am worried that what has happened to me will start happening to other people, and so I don't feel comfortable keeping quiet about this anymore.
That is absolutely valid, and I am very sorry that you have been put through not just the initial being taken advantage of, but the continued harassment afterward. That's absolutely not fair to you, and the fact that he hasn't received any consequences yet is definitely a problem.
Well, Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead.
He definitely received quite a few consequences. I don't know if they're adequate consequences, but I think that what happened after the fact, where he was deplatformed by Gods and Radicals and ended up like leaving Twitter and leaving the entirety of his fan base, was definitely not, I wouldn't say like the best consequence, but it definitely was a consequence that I'm sure was felt.
Oh, so he was deplatformed. That's good
Yes.
to hear.
Yep.
I do appreciate that you came forward. This year, this past year, 2018, has been a year of continuous confrontation of sexual predators for me. It's been a large portion of my content outside my channel. I'm sure you saw the Toon Critic video.
Yep. It's 2018 feels like it's been 4 years rolled up into 1 year. Like, somebody told me in November, hey, isn't it weird that Tide Pods happened in January? And I went, Tide Pods happened in January? No, Tide Pods happened 5 years ago. What are you talking about? So it's definitely been a very long year, and I think, to me, the realization that it's been a long year definitely hit when I realized that all of this between me and Dr. Bones started with an incident in March, and it feels like it's been forever since that happened. And so it's completely surprising for me to have that realization that, oh yeah, this all has happened within the span of 1 year. That's it.
You did say that he was deplatformed after you came forward.
Yes.
I have found it very difficult to find his content to use in my video covering the subject. Has he deleted his channel as well?
He deleted everything. So what happened to start with was that Gods and Radicals, the platform that we both write for, came forward and said, we're taking down all of his work, and we're not affiliated. I mean, they weren't affiliated with him anymore to start with. He left Gods and Radicals independently of his own volition in November, so he wasn't going to be writing for them anymore anyway. But he still was getting money from them because he had published a few books through them, and he also had articles that he had written for them. And so basically Gods and Radicals came out and said, we're not publishing his books anymore. We've taken down all of his articles that he's ever written for us, which was a substantial amount of articles. Bones wrote probably like 2 to 3, sometimes 4 articles a month for Gods and Radicals. And then once Gods and Radicals took down all his work, it was kind of a snowballing avalanche from there. He took down his Patreon, he took down his YouTube, he took down his actual website too, where he had all of his blog posts and all of his articles that he wrote even outside Gods and Radicals. And that was after he had posted this really lame apology.
Oh, I've seen the apology in your response to it.
Yes.
The sheer amount of victim blaming and, ooh, so poor me, feel bad for me, I did a horrible thing and am now facing consequences.
I know.
It's asinine.
It is. And I think that if it was just, oh, woo, poor me, woe is me, this is so terrible in my life, like, I would have even been okay with that, because I would have been like, look, it's piteous. Poor thing. So sad. A single tear as I play the tiniest violin for you. But, like, the victim blaming I was expecting. What I wasn't expecting was that it would be a victim blaming statement that from the very beginning of it was entirely untrue. Like, if you're going to call somebody out in a way that's victim blaming, at least make it so that way it sounds remotely plausible and not easily refuted by the screenshots that I have already posted calling you out. Like, it was ridiculous, and there was definitely a couple things about it that made my blood boil when I read it, which was why I posted it on my Twitter. It's still my pinned tweet on Twitter about his apology and me just kind of like going through and making a few points about what he had made up about it.
Yeah, there will be links to both your original thread and your response to his apology in the description of the video. And I encourage all of my listeners to please give both threads a read and go at it from an objective angle. We are not here about Bond's politics or Bones' politics. This is very clearly about a man taking advantage of someone and then deciding to go around and lie about it when there is clear evidence that he is an absolute fuckwit.
Yep. Fuckwit's a good word. I like that.
I encourage all of you to go and follow Bon as well, because you deserve to get something out of this mess.
Oh, thank you. I'm definitely in a position where I had more followers after this than I have to start with. So I've definitely, I'm not going to tell everybody, oh yes, please follow me, you have to follow me. But I definitely, I make funny jokes sometimes.
Yeah, I noticed that you are also a fan of the word shitscram.
Yes, I love shitscram. Merry shitscram, everybody.
Merry shitscram.
The most important time of the year.
I almost exclusively use the word shitscram in conversation outside my videos.
The reason for the season.
Indeed. One thing I want to discuss with you is, do you feel that the way you came out publicly about Dr. Bones' manipulation and abuse was productive, and do you recommend other victims who have a strong platform come forward about their abusers if they are a public figure?
Absolutely. When I posted this thread, I want to set the scene real quick. So it was the last night that I was in Florida. I had talked to my roommates, vacation mates, people that I was on vacation with about how if we left Florida at night and then drove through Florida and through Georgia overnight, that we would miss the majority of the pre-Christmas Sunday crowd that was going to be swarming every major city in the South through that day, because it was December 23rd. And I posted that thread as we were leaving the hotel, and I still had this intensely nervous, almost a nervous breakdown when I'm driving across Florida. And even when we got out of Florida and got to the Georgia state line, I had this image in my head that all of this was going to go down and everybody was going to hate me, and I was going to open my Twitter after hours of driving and I was going to find my Twitter was blocked or my Twitter was banned or something like that because people had swarmed and reported the thread or something like that. I don't know. I have anxiety, so I blow everything up to the 9th proportion of whatever hell I can think of. And so
that's absolutely valid. I have anxiety too. You are perfectly fine, sugar.
So I get on Twitter after I've been driving across Florida for 3 hours, and it's just this wall of retweets and likes and outpouring of support, and I'm just like, where did all you people come from? I started out, I have, on Twitter right now, I have 1,500 followers. I started this thread with 92. And it's just that moment where it was like,
Oh
where
my
did you
God.
all come from? Like, Jesus. Like, and it was... So I definitely want to tell people, like, even if you don't have a strong platform, calling out abusers and calling out stuff like this is very important. And I think the thing that really drove it home for me was that after I went and continued driving across Georgia, and when I stopped driving at like 6 o'clock in the morning, I looked at my phone and I had messages. I had a message from one person, and then I got another message later on that day from another person. And these two people who have asked to remain anonymous, so I won't say anything about them, both of these people were like, hey, so there was some weird stuff going on between me and Bones too. And there was a third person that contacted me a little later after that like was just starting to get some weird messages from Bones that was like, hey, how are you doing? I really like your stuff, like that sort of thing. But then there was other messages from other people, and most of them were AFAB people. That was like, hey, I really like your writing. Hey, I think that you would have a really good platform if you wanted to work together with stuff and that sort of thing. And it was the same kind of language that he was using to start reeling me in for what would eventually become our relationship. Like, it was really sickening to me. And so, like, at the end of my thread, when I said that he had sent me this text message about his wife finding his texts, and she wanted him to block all of the people that he had been flirting with, and I realized that he had said people, plural, which was the reason why I freaked out. I felt very vindicated in the fact that that was not something that I had just imagined in my head, but that was something that was true. And so it definitely... I had a complex reaction to that. I had the reaction of, I was very happy that I could nip that sort of thing in the bud, and that what I had planned on happening, which was that I was going to talk to Bones and be like, hey, we can't do this anymore. I'm going to leave you alone. You're going to leave me alone. Fuck off, politely. And then never really talk to him again. I was glad that that ended up not happening, because I realized that if that had happened, that one, he could have talked me out of it, and two, he would have been like, okay, and then continued on with this same behavior towards other people. But I also felt like this immense guilt that I had been holding on to this long enough that he had started grooming other people in my absence. Because in the last month of our... I hate calling it a relationship because it wasn't a relationship. In the last month of what was happening, I had pulled away from him severely. And so I felt like me doing that was kind of the catalyst for him starting to reach out to groom other people.
I definitely wouldn't blame you for his choices, but him losing access to the person he'd been grooming would definitely have been a catalyst. It's not your fault, those were his choices, but when a predator loses access to their victim, they're going to go out hunting again. Let's put it that way.
And it was, I had this moment, so I've been seeing my current partner for a little while, and we made our relationship Facebook official at the start of December, and I started getting these messages from people that were like, oh yeah, Bones started talking to me, and they started telling me when this had started happening, and all three of these people who messaged me said that this started at the beginning of December. And it was kind of like, when somebody told me that, I ended up, or when somebody sent me the messages and I started seeing the dates on them, I like had a panic attack, and I went to the other person that had spoken to me about Bones, and I said, when did he start messaging you? And they told me the time, and it was around the same time, and I literally like had a panic attack where I was like, oh, this was the reason, this was the catalyst, was because I had started another relationship. And so it was kind of upsetting for me in that angle as well.
That can definitely be something that stirs up anxiety, especially if you have a guilt complex, which a lot of us do.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know a single abuse survivor that didn't develop a guilt complex one way or another. So, as you've stated, there is a clear pattern to Dr. Bones' behavior. He reaches out to usually femme or AFAB individuals, whether they be non-binary or cisgender, and tries to appeal to them as a content creator before trying to start a sexual relationship with them. Do you feel like this is a form of grooming that he's adopted specifically because he's part of anarchist academia? Or do you think it's a technique he developed so that he could become a part of anarchist academia and use influence he has in that community to obtain more victims?
So I think that this is definitely a form of grooming that can be pulled from anarchist academia and made completely isolated in of itself. I don't necessarily believe that the politics of I don't necessarily believe that our politics had anything to do with what he was doing. I think that a lot of it had to do with the fact that he was a content creator. A lot of people pointed out or predicted, I guess, when this started happening and after he pulled his page, I had a few people predicting that he would come back as like a right-wing, neo-Nazi, white supremacist guy, and it wouldn't be surprising to them. And at the time, I thought, okay, but I know Bones' politics. As somebody who obviously worked very close with him, I don't think that's going to happen. But like a few days later, Louis C.K., who was like the biggest feminist in comedy until he got caught with his dick out and was being an asshole, came back and also did a complete 180 where his politics changed severely, and then he started doing comedy that appealed to Trump supporters. And so I had that moment of, that wouldn't be surprising then, I guess. But I don't necessarily think that he got into anarchist academia specifically because he wanted to chase trim, for lack of a better term. But he definitely...
No, that's perfectly fair.
But he was active in the anarchist community before I started talking to him, and what happened had happened. And then after all this, he's obviously not anymore. And I wouldn't be surprised if he came back and tried to act like, oh, I've reformed, I'm a better person now. Let's all pretend that this didn't happen, because I know that writing was very important to him. But at the same time, like, he definitely was writing very differently and trending more towards anarchy in his later work, and I feel like he might trend in a different direction if he ever decides to come back, which hopefully he won't, but that's neither here nor there.
So you believe that this was more him abusing power he already had, rather than him seeking power in a community specifically to abuse others? That makes
definitely.
Sense.
Yeah.
There are a lot of predators who do that. So, since you've come forward and you've been shown all of this support, have there been any other victims of other predators in the community that have come forward? Has this started a chain reaction, or does it feel like Dr. Bones might be one of a very small number of predators in your community?
It's definitely been more of the latter than the former. I haven't seen any sort of avalanche about any more anarchists being called out because of their behaviors. Now, granted, I have seen a couple of people point out that there is another anarchist in the community. I don't know this person personally, but there were a lot of people that talked about Lorelei Bailey in the wake of Dr. Bones. And what was essentially being said is that if we're going to get on this train, this bandwagon of believing all survivors, can we start believing the survivor that came forward about Lorelei Bailey? And I guess this happened a few months ago, that somebody had come out against this person and said, and had rape allegations against this person, and they didn't get deplatformed. And I know that there's some people that I'm following that follow her. And so I thought that that was kind of pointed, that this happened with Bones and he got deplatformed instantly. Like, the entire community turned against him and said, all right, fuck this guy, we don't want anything to do with him. But then there's still this person in the community that also has rape allegations against them that was called out, and nothing really happened to them. And I don't know whether it's because Lorelei is more, I wouldn't necessarily say popular, but more palatable to some people, or if it's because Dr. Bones was a cis white man that a lot of people already had a lot of grudges against, that this was finally the way that he could be taken down, I guess, because a lot of people held a lot of grudges against him for his politics and for some other shady behavior that he had. But there was definitely a few people that talked about this that said, hey, you know, there's this other person in our community that was called out a little while ago that nothing really happened to them. And I made note of that, but I didn't. And I retweeted a couple things about that, but nothing still came of it. So it's kind of I don't really know what kind of pushed what happened with Bones over the edge of making that happen, or making his deplatforming and making his downfall happen, per se. But it didn't happen for this other person. So that's kind of something that I've watched with more than a little passing interest, where it's just like, believe all survivors, except in the cases where you don't want to, I guess. Like, it's made me a bit cynical, but I'm cynical to start with, so.
Valid. And if Lorelei's victim is listening to this, I would love to talk to you about what happened. My platform is always open to victims of sexual predators who want to talk about what they're going through, come forward, present their evidence, and hopefully make an impact. You guys are always welcome. And Bon, you are always welcome back on my channel.
Oh, thank you. I will try to talk about other things if I am welcomed back again, I assure you. maybe not such heavy topics. Or if it's a heavy topic, it's not as, I don't know, this heavy. We can get varying degrees of heaviness here, and maybe I can be a bit more comedic.
Well, I did one video on child abuse and another video analyzing VeggieTales. This channel is very diverse.
I remember the child abuse video. That was a really good one.
Oh, thank you. I have gotten controversial replies to it, but yeah. I'm used to it. That's what happens when you're a vocal leftist in this world. People are gonna have opinions.
Oh yeah.
Is there anything you would like to say to other victims of popular name predators who use their power to sort of garner more people towards their grooming? Anything you'd like to say to people who are afraid to come forward about being groomed?
I think one of the things that really stalled me on it, one of the things that I had to think about before I came forward, was that people will have a reaction to what you're saying, especially if you use the term groomed. And I think the thing that I might have gone back and redone, if I could have like a second chance at this, first off, I would have done it again completely 100 times over. But I definitely would have added another tweet in between a couple of other tweets that I had that would have essentially said, grooming is not just about children, it's also about adults. Because one of the things I did have, there was about a 90-10 split of people that were supportive, and then I had about 10% of people that were assholes. And one of the bandwagons that the asshole train jumped on was, oh, well, grooming's only for children. And the thing is that grooming is not just children. And it's, you know, like, if you have somebody who is in a position of power over you, even if you are an adult, that can still be considered grooming. Grooming is a form of operant conditioning. It's a psychological thing. I could tell you to go read about it and link a bunch of Wikipedia articles, and I'm sure that there will be links in the description about this. But, like, but grooming isn't just a thing that can happen to children. And so that mindset where grooming is only a thing that happens to children, or only a thing that happens to those who are, like, I use really, really heavy air quotes here, weak-minded, is definitely it's definitely a thing, a preconception that we need to smash. Because I'm definitely not a weak-minded person, and I'm definitely not a child. But I was taken in by this person who promised, oh yeah, if you continue talking to me and we continue having this relationship, or you keep working with me and doing these favors for me, I'll be able to help you get your articles published, or I have an ear of the editor so I can get you a book deal if you want to write a book. Like, that sort of thing was kind of what kept me from stepping away from Bones, was that he had this power that I didn't have, that I was thinking was required for me to be able to get anywhere in publishing or in the anarchist community at all. My thought was always, over the course of this past year, I always had this belief in the back of my mind that I would live and die in Dr. Bones' shadow, and if he fell, I was going to fall. Which is part of the reason that, like, a lot of people after this came forward and said, oh, well, you couldn't have been in this terrible relationship with him, like you said, because you were living in a place, you know, like 1,000 miles away, and he was in Florida, and I can't believe that he had this power over you, where it was me getting on Twitter and posting replies to people that were trying to be that were trying to shame him, or that were trying to say nasty things about him or point out flaws in his politics, and me defending him at every turn. But the thing is that, like, I was doing these things because I had held the innate belief for a very long time that if Dr. Bones ended up getting deplatformed, or ended up losing popularity over his politics or over things that he said, I was going to go down on this ship with him, because I was not independent enough, or I was not talented enough to be able to survive in this community without him. So I want to tell...
I have gone through something very similar recently. I know exactly how you feel. That kind of thing can really keep a person from feeling capable of stepping forward when something goes wrong. And the fact that you overcame that is definitely something I'm grateful for.
I really hope that anybody listening to this that feels this powerlessness, or feels that they can't come forward because they don't have enough power, or they won't be believed, or they this person has so much power over them that they can outshout you. I hope that this story of me being able to deplatform someone who at his height on Twitter had over 7,000 followers and was doing all of this work, where he had a podcast, he had books out, he had all of this stuff. Me, with 2 articles and 92 followers, like, I know that follower counts don't really matter in the real world, but, you know, like, still in comparison between the two, just to be able to tell people, like, you can beat your abuser. You can overcome the shit that they have done to you. And that's a really important narrative that I don't think that we hear often enough. We hear about the story of the abused taking on their abuser, but then it's kind of like, and then they took him on, and that's the end. And you don't really hear about the aftermath. And I just want people to know that, like, there will be people who will be nasty to you. You will probably have to block a couple people on Twitter or on YouTube or on Facebook or whatever medium that you're using. But there will be support for you. And I hope that that helps people come forward and come out about what's happened to them.
And almost always there is more than one victim. And you coming forward can inspire other victims to step forward and say, oh shit, I thought I was the only one. There are others. That means I have a chance.
Exactly. I remember when I was in college, I minored in women's studies. And one of the things that always struck me was that the percentage of people who are convicted of rape has like an 80 to 90% chance. I'd have to look up the numbers again to be more specific, but it's almost always that this person who has been convicted of rape has raped other people, has multiple victims. It's just that they've finally been caught and they've finally been prosecuted. And even people who aren't prosecuted, you find out, have had multiple victims. And so it's not a behavior that's isolated just to you. It's almost always expanded to somebody else.
And sometimes having the courage to step forward and say, I've been abused by this person, can make a huge difference in whether or not that person finally gets punished for the things that they've done.
Mm-hmm.
Because if no one speaks out, no one's going to know what the hell's going on.
Mm-hmm. There were multiple catalysts for me coming out about what had happened to me and what had happened between me and Bones. One of the biggest catalysts for me, though, is that there was a video posted by a really famous animatic YouTuber, video creator called Illymation. And
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I love those videos, and I absolutely think that everybody in the world should watch How I Met My Abusive Ex and How I Left My Abusive Ex. And then if you can stomach those, you should definitely see the part 2.5 where she goes and she meets the other girl that her ex stalked and talks to that girl too, because that video really changed my perception of, hey, you could come out about this and you could talk about this and you would be able to come forward and feel better about yourself having come forward about it. I saw both of those videos after the second one had come out, and I was very moved by both of them, and that was not necessarily the reason why I posted the Twitter thread, but it definitely had a contribution for me personally in terms of deciding I need to finish this thing between me and Bones and I need this to stop. Because I'm trying to think. The first video that she had posted where she was talking about how her ex was asking her for nudes all the time while she was at school, while she was at work, while she was at swim practice, while she was with her friends and her family, and it was this long spiel about how he was constantly asking her for nudes and that sort of thing. I kind of sat back at that point in her video and I went, oh shit, this is me. Because there would be times where out of the blue at 5 o'clock in the morning, Bones would text me and be like, I want to see pictures of your naked body today. And I was just like, oh, okay, I'm trying to sleep, but all right, have some of these. And the thing is that he could never keep any of them because he couldn't keep them on his phone because his wife would see them. And then it was me basically just sending him old nudes constantly. Where like I had a folder of them specifically labeled like lewds and nudes, so that way I would be able to get to them in my phone faster to send them to him. And then like I would constantly get comments about like, oh, these are old ones, I want you to take new ones. And I'd be like, well, it's kind of 5 o'clock in the fucking morning right now, so that's not going to happen. And plus he knew that I was dysphoric about my body because I'm transgender. Huh, what a thought, that I don't want you to see my boobs all the time because I kind of hate them. Like, it was definitely something that when I heard that in her video, I was completely floored by this. Oh yeah, that's happening to me right now. That's weird.
I can definitely feel the whole, I don't want to send you nudes because even I don't want to look at my naked body.
Yeah. And it was, you know, there's a difference, and I could talk for hours about this. It was this constant, well, you already have nudes online, so I don't see why it's a problem sending them to me. Well, part of it is, one, that I have a lewd account, and it's called Swamp Looting, and I think that one of the funniest things that has come out of me posting this thread is that I added my lewd account during my thread, and then I would switch over to my lewd account on my phone, which I haven't posted anything on since March, like April, and I now have like 220 follower requests for that account, and I was like, that's what you got out of this? Was that, oh yeah, all of these traumatic things happened to me, but hey, ask to follow my lewd account on Twitter. Like, that was kind of a funny side effect, I guess.
Funny in a ha-ha way or funny in an uncomfortable way? Because I'm getting a little bit of both here.
Both is accurate. I can definitely laugh at the terrible things that are happening in my life. It was definitely... Yep. But so it was definitely one of those moments where I was like, you know, where he was telling me, oh, well, you already have these things posted online, so I don't see why it's such a big deal to send them to me. Well, one, they're posted online in a very small community of like 40 people that follow me, like 20 of which are porn bot accounts that are kind of like, hey, you should sign up for our video service. And I'm like, hey, maybe, like, I don't know. But also, like, these 40 people, or these now 20 people, because again, half of them are bots, these 20 people are paying for my nudes. Like, it's sex work. And the idea that it was kind of not only disrespectful to me as somebody who is transgender, in that I'm dysphoric about my body and I don't want to show you these pictures all the time because I don't like seeing them myself, but also disrespectful to me as a sex worker, where it's, oh, hey, I see that you're posting these things for money, but I deserve to have them for free. And
so that's double the skeevy. Yeah,
exactly.
Ew, gross.
Yeah, and there's this one tweet that I am going to make a motion like it's going to be posted here for an animation. Bing! And hopefully it's posted next to me. Animation's great. And I'll link you to the tweet. Where I specifically said that at one point I had visited a sex worker friend of mine in Chicago, and she and I played this game called Chicago Capture the Flag, or Capture the Flag Chicago style. And basically what it was is that we ran around and stole American flags around Chicago.
Oh my god, I love this.
It was fun. It was the best thing that I have ever played in a long time. And so we took pictures, naturally, of our success. There is definitely a picture of me laying on a floor surrounded by 12 American flags, 1 Canadian flag, and 2 of those incredibly tacky blue stripe Blue Lives Matter flags.
There's a guy that drives through our town in a semi with one of those Blue Lives Matter flags mounted on a pole in the center of the bed of his truck, and I am 100% sure that's illegal, because that has got to be a road hazard.
All I'm saying is that Capture the Flag Chicago style should be spread to every corner of the globe.
I do not condone theft of property, but I'm not going to say not to play it.
Fair. So we had posted, or I had taken a couple of pictures, and so I asked this person. She is Crime Hooker on Twitter, and she should also be followed. She's super great. I had asked this person, who is also a sex worker, hey, do you mind if I take a picture of this and send it to Bones? And she was okay with it. So I sent a picture to Bones, and he said something really nasty, which is part of the reason that I was like, hey, we should just link this tweet, because I don't want to say what he said, but I definitely have had to write it a couple of times, and I was very uncomfortable with that conversation. Like, so uncomfortable that was one of the only tweets, or not one of the tweets, that was one of the only messages from him that I ever deleted in the course of us talking. Where it was one of those things where it's like, even if I was going to keep receipts of these conversations, I don't want to keep this one because I am uncomfortable having it in my phone. And it was just completely surprising to me that he would say something like this, not just to me, but to this person. And then 2 months later, he interviewed her for a article that he wrote on Gods and Radicals about sex work and the FOSTA-SESTA bill being passed in Congress, and he interviewed her after saying what he had said to me. And that was very jarring for me. And that was one of the things that, like, in the course of this affair happening, caused me to draw even further away from him and try to isolate myself from him, even though I knew that I couldn't do that fully.
And yet, eventually, you were able to do it fully.
Yes.
And I know we don't know each other very well. We've only been talking for about a week, but I am proud of you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. The support that I got from the community and the support that I've gotten just from individual people in general has been really great. Like, I've had messages in my inbox that I've had people send me a message that's like, hey, I don't know you, but I just want you to know that I'm very happy that you came forward about this, and I support you, and if you ever need to talk, I'm here. And then I'd get another message from another person that would basically say, hey, you don't know me, and I'm sorry, you probably have an inbox full of messages right now, but I want you to know that I'm very supportive of you, and I want you to... And it's just all of these messages from people that don't know me, that I've never interacted with before, that are just like being really supportive and really sweet, and it's just like, there is good in the world, yay, hurrah. And so that's been a wonderful thing for me.
It's really empowering to receive that level of compassion from other people, especially when you're coming forward with something as intense as this.
Mm-hmm.
And with all the horror stories out there about people who have lost their careers because they came forward about being a victim of a sexual predator, like, knowing that there are people who will support you, who will stand by you and help you get your word out there, it's comforting.
It is.
It really is.
And as somebody that, because of political affiliations and because of my interest in politics and women's studies and religious studies and all these sorts of things that I'm interested in, sitting and watching the Supreme Court nomination of Brett Kavanaugh this year and seeing how the allegations against him proceeded in court definitely was a blow to me personally when it came to, oh, people won't believe your story if you bring it forward because look at the highest echelons of our legal system. But this is also part of the reason why I'm an anarchist.
That's completely valid. I'm all for dismantling a good majority of our current system because there is no way anyone can deny that it's broken.
Yes. It's definitely, like, I could wax poetic about politics for the majority of 2 hours, and we would have so much fun with that. But I think that would be something that would be definitely appropriate for a different video.
Yeah,
that's a video in of itself.
Once I start doing Patchy's Fun Dungeon, which is the podcast I've been working on putting together, I would definitely love to bring you on for a couple episodes to talk about ideology, because you are an incredibly intelligent person from what I've seen, and I feel like the discussions we could have would be really fun.
Oh, thank you. I like to think that I have this great mixture of intelligence, charisma, and comedy that allow me to actually talk about something and not be so dry that you would put me on television in front of a bunch of high school students to make them fall asleep for a class period. So...
You are charismatic, and I appreciate the fact that you're very confident in your personality, because you... Even just in your shit posts on Twitter, you are a very entertaining and articulate person.
Oh, the shit posting has only just begun.
That's part of why I wanted to do this interview with you, because you're someone who has a very strong personality, who can discuss something as intense as this and still remain both engaging and entertaining for people. You're a good person to engage with, especially on deep subject matter.
Aw, thanks. I'm gonna have a tear. Just one.
I boop you through the computer.
I've been booped. Oh no. But no, it's just I've had not to get terribly like depressing or down, but like I had a shit childhood. I've had a shit adulthood. I would like to hope that my adulthood will not continue to be shit. But unfortunately, I cannot predict the future, and based on logical assumption from what has been shit before, there's the thought process and arriving at the conclusion that things will continue to be shit, maybe less shit because I've gone through enough shit to know what shit looks like. Mm-hmm. I think that if I say shit like 3 more times, we get an R rated. This will be exciting. It's...
My content isn't monetized. You can say whatever the fucking titty you want.
Hell yeah. With that in mind, now that I know that, fuckstick wangrod.
Cock ring!
Exciting.
Oh, we're adults.
Yep. Adulting in the most adulty way possible. Because I've gone through shit, I've found that the best way to deal with it is through humor. And, I've kind of modeled my life off of comedians that were inherently bad influences on me. And so, my main role model as a child was Robin Williams. So... Basically, for me, it was like, oh yeah, well, that was sad a couple years ago. But even after he committed suicide, I still appreciated his work, and I still appreciated the fact. If anything, I appreciated him more because it was, oh yeah, it's not just me believing that my life is sad and believing that all of these terrible things are happening to me, but I'm still being funny, so clearly all of this shit doesn't matter and I'm just making it up in my head. He was a profoundly sad man too, and so he dealt with what was affecting him in his life through humor. And so it was kind of that moment of, oh good, I'm doing something right. It's not just me. This is good. But I'm also, going to therapy and doing all of these other important things that are important when you have depression and anxiety and all of these other things, instead of just dealing with it through humor. But,
Oh, absolutely. There is no reason you can't combine professional help with lifestyle changes to improve your overall mental health. In fact, It's usually recommended that you integrate certain lifestyle changes when you're recovering from a mental health problem, especially humor. I was told by my therapist multiple times to start going to indie comedy nights at the local cafe because she thought it would help my mental health improve. Comedy is a very good way to make yourself feel a little more in control, because if you can laugh about it, that means that you're in control of something.
Mm-hmm. And there's times in my life, kind of tying back into what this episode is about, like this thing with Bones. It was definitely a thing where it was like, I don't know if I would be able to laugh about this, but like when it happened, I was like, I don't think that I'll ever be able to come out and actually like find humor in this, or be able to look back on this and laugh. But now it's been like a few weeks later, and it doesn't feel like it's been a few weeks. Like, this happened like on the 23rd. This was what, like 2 weeks ago? Oh my god, it was like 2 weeks ago. But it was like, I even looking back 2 weeks ago, like, I'm finding some humor in it. I'm definitely finding humor in my reaction that, like, I posted this in the middle of the night in the hotel room, and then I got the fuck out of Dodge, like, leaving Florida, speeding down the interstate, going, oh my god, I hope that he doesn't catch me. Like, it's that moment where it was like, you're not in a James Bond movie. I think you're going to be fine. Like, me getting to the Florida-Georgia border, and me, like, going into the rest stop as we came into Georgia, and being like, looking around the bathroom stalls, making sure nobody else is in the bathroom. I hear the door open. I jump. I go, oh god, oh god. And it's another woman using the fucking restroom. Like, surprise? And me just going, oh yeah, duh. But then, you know, like, I still have a lot of anxiety, like, about the whole thing. But
trauma impacts the brain. There's no reason for you not to have anxiety.
Yeah. And it's that moment, like, somebody pointed this out to me, and it was almost this moment where it was like somebody said to me, hey, do you ever worry about this? And it's like, no, I didn't worry about it before you mentioned it to me, but now that you mention it, yeah, a little bit. But it was somebody who mentioned to me, hey, have you ever considered that you've deplatformed Dr. Bones, who is a violent insurrectionist that talked all the time about arming yourself to start a revolution, had a picture of him pointing a gun at a camera for his About the Author picture on multiple platforms. Do you ever worry that now that he has all this free time, he's going to come after you and your family? And I was like, you know, now that I think about it, why did you make me think about this? That's fucking terrifying. Like,
if you want, like, links to resources to get self-defense stuff, like pepper spray and alarm systems, I know people, and I've got
I have a lot of things, and I think that the biggest thing that I've told multiple people, and I'll say it out loud, like, I think one of the biggest things that keeps Bones away from me, or like even retaliating against me directly, because I thought that he was going to message me, I thought that he was going to call me, I thought that he hasn't contacted me specifically at all. Like, he put out his apology, but that was a public thing, and it was not directed at me personally. But one of the things that really surprised me when all of this happened was that he didn't do that, because I was expecting that. And then I came to the realization that, like, I know his name, I know his address, I know his wife's name, and I know where he works, and I know who his family is, and, like, I know all of this information about him because he told me all this information about him and his family. So, like, the reason why he hasn't come after me personally is because, like, and I said this after he posted his apology, because I realized that he was watching my tweets and watching everything that I was doing, was that I said specifically, I'm not going to dox you. That's a terrible thing to do. Reed, who is the editor at Gods and Radicals, Reed and I have had some discussions about doxing Nazis and doxing people in the alt-right. And I'm for it. However, I'm not necessarily so fond of doxing that I would do it to leftists or fellow leftists, or even somebody who was a leftist in theory but not in practice, Bones. But it's definitely the threat of it is there. And I said specifically, like, in a tweet directed at him, that I'm not going to dox you unless you threaten me and my family. And so the natural response would be... No, that's
perfectly fair.
Yeah, and so the natural response would be, oh, well, if you dox Dr. Bones, then he could dox you. But the thing is that he can't really, because he doesn't have my address, and he also knows that I live a very itinerant lifestyle where I am constantly moving, and so he could put out a name and an address and be like, oh, look, this is who Prosper Bonhomme really is. And it would be like, all right, so I'm just going to like move a state over and nobody's going to know. And plus on top of that, that would be entirely irrelevant anyway, given that I'm also changing my name because, oh yeah, dead naming and transgender and all this other stuff. And so the only really terrible thing that he could do is that he could be like, this is your name. But like anybody who actually wanted to find me and try to dox me, whether it would be a fellow leftist or somebody on the alt-right, could probably easily do so anyway. So I don't really see the point in trying to stress about that or worry about it.
And a majority of doxing happens through the white pages anyway, and that's public information. It's not illegal to dox with information from the white pages.
Exactly.
It's just illegal to promote violence against said doxing victim.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the most interesting thing is that, like, I've already said, hey, Bones, I'm not gonna dox you, so this isn't a problem. But, like, there's already people on the left and in the anarchist community that in responses to other people being like, hey, this is what happened with Bonhomme and this is what happened with Bones, there's already people who have found him, like, that are like, hey, isn't it this guy? And I go, well, I can't comment on this because if I say no, I'm lying, and if I say yes, I've basically said that I basically would be breaking a promise that I'm not going to dox this person. But yeah, that's a pretty accurate representation of the shittiness of his internet security. So
definitely. And I do think that if he did go after you or your family, you would be completely within your rights to dox him. I have a friend named Leo Convoy. He is a relatively apolitical Christian YouTuber who fucks with Christians that don't have any idea what they're doing, and he's very pro-LGBT. He's a very good man, and he repeatedly doxes pedophiles, like, all the time. It's like a hobby to him. If he finds out that someone is messing with kids or is preying on any of his friends, he will, and I kid you not, he's done this on live streams, call their mothers.
Oh my god. This is amazing. It's hilarious.
You would like Leo Convoy. That man does not fuck around.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's done like some fun shit to fucked up people. He's a good man.
God. That's great.
But I completely understand why you don't want to dox him on a moral perspective right now, because he hasn't really come after you. He hasn't put you at risk in response to you confronting him. But if he does, I'll meet you there.
I'm fairly confident that he's not going to.
As am I. He seems like a bit too much of a coward to do that.
Yeah, I was about to say, as much as Bones has talked about violent insurrection in his articles, and talks, like, he went to a speaking engagement in Connecticut, got drunk in front of a bunch of college kids, and asked them if they would be able to be tortured for the cause or would be willing to pick up guns against fascists and fight for the anarchist movement, for insurrectionists. And I kind of, like, people are telling me this post me writing this entire Twitter thread, and I'm sitting here going, like, this motherfucker doesn't even go to protests. Like, he doesn't even suit up for going to protests or doing any black bloc work or, like, anything that other remotely politically active anarchists do. Hell, I don't think that he even hits the gun range enough times to be able to shoot the broadside of a barn. So him trying to tell college students that, oh, you need to be prepared to die for the cause, is me sitting here going, like, motherfucker, like, what do you do with your time? Like, it always struck me as more of a persona than an actual stance. Like, he was always the sort of person.
He wants to play the martyr without dying for the cause, basically.
Oh yeah, he definitely wore a lot of people ask me in both like when he was active and now after he's been deplatformed, if what he was doing was a mask and what part of him was actually him. And I think that the biggest thing is that, like, I've met a lot of people, myself included, that put on a very charismatic front and put on this personality in order to gain the trust of other people and also, like, be who I am, like, as a person. Like, I'm very charismatic. I'm very funny. I like to think that I'm very funny anyway. And my friends have told me so, and so I am willing to believe the lie if it's not true. But it's...
I think my listeners will definitely find you charismatic. You're
yes.
At the minimum entertaining.
I was about to say, I just roll really good charisma checks. That's all it is. It's just that I have weighted dice. I cheat at it. I put them in the oven. I made sure that they roll the way that I want them to. Nat 20s across the board. It's definitely not chance. It's all practice. But so I had a lot of people that would ask me after the fact if what he was doing was a face or whether it was his personality. And I say this knowing that he will probably listen to this interview and is probably still monitoring my Twitter through whatever sock accounts that he's deciding to use. But I think that Dr. Bones as a personality was about 50% Bones and 50% bravado. I think that he really wanted to be the person that he was pretending to be, but he knew that his life was so unfulfilling that he couldn't be that person. And
that's probably why he became a predator, I would suspect.
Based on what he told me about his childhood, I think that as a kid, he was very, very scared and very, very bullied. And so he grew up to be this person that he was like, if I was bullied by these kids and I was bullied by the world, then I am going to bully the world and nobody can stop me. And it definitely, in retrospect, kind of makes me sad and kind of makes me pity him, but also it doesn't, because I was a bullied kid and I was scared of the world, but I didn't turn into a predator. So take that as you will.
That's because it's more common for AMAB people who feel powerless to start seeking ways to dominate others and reassert their power. Meanwhile, AFAB abusers usually have far more complicated reasons than just I'm power hungry and I want to feel in control. Not all AFAB abusers are more complicated than that. Abusers are abusers universally, and abuse is always a choice. Mm-hmm. But I've noticed more often than not, AMAB and especially cis male abusers tend to be people who just want to seek power. They want to feel in control of others, and they'll do anything to keep that power.
I've been in abusive relationships before, Bones. It seems to be a pattern. But I think that the biggest thing about the cycle of abuse is that eventually, as I would make a bet for any amount of money, and I would probably not lose this bet, that any AFAB person that is an abuser became that way because somebody abused them. As somebody who has come out of the cycle of abuse and has had to put a stall on relationships until I had enough therapy to work through some of these coping mechanisms that became abusive in the relationships that I would have later that ended up making me the abuser, I definitely empathize, but also feel no pity for the people that go on as abuse victims to become abusers, if that makes sense.
No, that makes complete sense. You can understand why someone does something they do and still not endorse it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I completely understand why my mother was the way she was. people who are longtime viewers of my channel will understand what I'm talking about.
Oof, if we're getting into mothers, then I'm going to need to switch from drinking Pepsi to drinking beer, because it's going to be a long conversation.
We can have that kind of conversation after the interview if you want to, but...
Oh, yeah.
Like, I understand why certain abusers in my past, whether it be my mother or my ex, were the way they were, but that doesn't make what they did to me okay.
Yep.
I'm still going to hold them accountable.
And it's one of those things where it's, you know, like, going back a couple of conversations to where this started, it was kind of was there any more questions that you wanted to ask me in this super serious interview that we definitely did not have to cut out a portion of because of very animatic comedy quality content?
Of course, this is completely unedited. What are you talking about?
No, I don't know what you're talking about. We definitely... Everything, straight from the beginning all the way to the end. There's nothing missing. Nothing at all. Don't know what you're talking about.
No, we're fine.
Yep.
I think the only question I really have left is... moving forward from what happened with Dr. Bones and you coming forward, do you think that this situation is going to impact your career going forward, and if so, how do you think it will?
Well, I can already say that it's definitely impacted my career going forward already, specifically because, back in November, when Bones had already left Gods and Radicals, which some people have wondered if this was because the revelations of what Dr. Bones was doing was already coming out, and so he had ended the partnership before this happened. And I want to take a moment and say that's definitely not true, and clear up that rumor right away. Dr. Bones left Gods and Radicals of his own volition. Reed Wildermuth of Gods and Radicals, who is the content manager, site editor of Gods and Radicals, did not know that this was going on until I posted that thread. And Myrna, who is now in charge of Gods and Radicals, also did not know. So nobody at Gods and Radicals knew about this. When Bones had left Gods and Radicals, I genuinely thought that my writing career was over, because I thought that the only reason why I was permitted, heavy air quotes, to write at Gods and Radicals was because Bones was basically telling them, hey, you should publish this person's articles. And so being able to come out about this and say, this is what has happened, and have Gods and Radicals reach out to me and say, hey, this is not true. In the sense that this is not true that you needed Bones to do this for you, and we're deeply sorry that you felt this way, and that we did not accurately talk to you about this before, which it wasn't their fault. But they still felt very bad about it, and they were like, we just want you to know that you got into Gods and Radicals based on the merits of your writing, your own merits. And so if you want to continue writing for us, we will publish anything that you send us. We think that your writing is great. You potentially getting a book deal from us was not because Bones talked you up, as he continually said that he did. It was because we think that your writing is good, and we would like to continue platforming you. And so I was very honored that they felt that way. And then just being able to like have an interview like this, and then also I got approached by somebody with Black Banner Magic podcast, which is made by the same radio station, Rev Left Radio, which is a podcast network that also at one point hosted Dr. Bones. That these people came forward, also deplatformed him. He used to be on a podcast called The Guillotine. The Guillotine deplatformed him before Gods and Radicals deplatformed him. Like, it was instant.
Yeah, that's how I found out about this whole thing. My partner and I are avid listeners of Guillotine.
Yeah, and I've talked to Brett, and I haven't talked to Brett, but I have listened to Brett, and I have tried to reach out to Brett about it. I would, and I'll say this now, on January 2nd, I would really love it if the guillotine could continue. I know that Brett has said that he is discontinuing the guillotine, that they're going to make something else in its wake. I really think that the guillotine would be great to continue, just with a different host, obviously. But I mean, really love Brett's work.
Brett is a very entertaining man, and he's very articulate, and I'd love to have him on Serious Talk at some point.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually the premiere of Serious Talk, so you get to be my first interviewee.
Hey, and I'm making it so serious.
Yeah, but it's good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if This Is Rad can move on with a change in cast, then there's no reason why Guillotine can't.
Yeah, and it was... I got a message from one of the guys at Rev Left Radio, the guy that runs Black Banner Magic, and he wanted to do an interview with me, and he was like, you could do an interview on anything that you want, basically. He was like, do you want to do an interview on egoism? And I was like, well, I would love to, but I don't think that I'm going to be able to have enough content on my belief in egoism to fill 50 minutes of podcast, so I can talk about multiple things. And so, like, we ended up coming up with something on that, and we're still in talks to discuss, like, what we're planning on doing on that front and when we're planning on recording and all that sort of thing. So that'll be interesting. But, like, my career has definitely gotten better because of this revelation, not because I came out, I didn't come out about all of this, and I didn't post all of this because I wanted the followers, or I wanted the career, or I wanted even people. One of my friends, Jean, who is amazing, posted my Cash App and was just like, hey, Bond's driving home from Florida right now, and also, like, they have a top surgery fund that they're working on, so if you want to throw some money at them, that would be great. I didn't have any knowledge of this while I was on the road, and suddenly I opened my Cash App and people sent me money. So, like, I definitely wasn't expecting that, but I didn't do it for the money, and I didn't do it for the fame, and I didn't do it for the glory, or for any other reason than I just wanted to make sure that, like, somebody who was being predatory in the community got caught in their own shit and paid for it. Or at the very least, if I couldn't make them pay for it, at least be able to say it's out there, so that way other people know that this has happened, and if they are being groomed by Bones, they know how this is going to go, or that they aren't alone in this happening to them. And so that was the only reason why I did it. And then the fact that, like, things have become exponentially better for me, I won't deny that that's happened since this started. Again, I started this with 92 followers, and I have at this moment, like, 1,571 now. I have gained a follower in the span of this recording. Like, that's the
Seriously?
kind of... Yeah, I don't know what's happened.
Oh my god, now you're at 1572.
Oh, Jesus.
Shit.
What?
You gained followers in the span of this interview.
I was about to say.
And I haven't even posted the video yet. It's going up Friday, by the way.
Awesome.
I'll make sure that you get a link so that you can share this interview with people in your circle.
I'll definitely, because I mentioned that I have a pinned tweet in this video, I won't say that it'll be my pinned tweet, but eventually it will be, because this will be awesome. But yeah, just, like, it's insane that, like, I have now 1,572 followers. Where did you come from? Why? I don't understand. But it's...
Well, I think a lot of us found out about what happened because a lot of notable leftists, and not even just anarchist leftists, but socialist leftists, even Democrats, like the centrist motherfuckers, are talking about this. A lot of people are, like, very happy that you were comfortable enough to come forward, even with the crippling anxiety that rules you every day, just as it does mine.
Yeah. I think that the biggest thing post Dr. Bones that I am worried about is that right before all this happened. Like, he was getting a lot of attention from the alt-right. Like, Alex Jones talked about him on the Alex Jones show, whatever the fuck he does. And there were a bunch of alt-right people targeting him specifically. And so, like, I'm really worried that this will gain the attention of those people, and then they'll be like, aha, we've deplatformed Dr. Bones! Like, and I say this, like, making hand motions up in the air, like that gif of Elmo and Hell.
I know exactly what gif you're talking about, and that's
Helmo.
a favorite of mine.
Helmo is God. Helmo is Satan, technically, but nonetheless. But their hands up in the air, flames rising behind them, going, we've deplatformed Dr. Bones, and me being like, well, actually, that was the left, but y'all go on doing your thing, preferably as far away from me and as, like, deep in the ocean and away from society as possible. But
Please
it's definitely...
walk into the ocean. Please.
Yes.
Please walk into the ocean.
Walk into the ocean, fire yourself into the sun. Really, I don't care. I gave you an option. Those are what you get. But it's definitely, like, I'm surprised at the attention. I definitely don't mind all of the attention, but it's definitely not what I came here for. And, you know, I had people after the fact that came out, and this is something that I do want to talk about. I had people come out after I posted everything, and I had some conservatives, some leftists, some I don't know what the fuck they're doing on my page. They've got 15 followers and like 2 tweets, and both of them are directed at me. But it's like, I had these people come forward and be like, well, you're just as culpable as he is, and this is just as much your fault as his, because you're an adulteress and you did these terrible things. And I was like, first off, adulteress is gendered, and I am not, so let's stop with that language. And second of all, like, I said at the very beginning, like, top of my thread, I was like, hey, I don't want your pity, and I don't want anybody, like, giving me eternal fame and glory for this. I even said, I'll probably lose friends, and I'll probably gain enemies, but this is something that needs to be said. And, like, even after the fact, when I had people telling me, this was an abusive relationship, you were sexually assaulted, you were raped, this was not your fault because you were drunk, like me counting off on my pause here, how many people have said these things to me. I still have this belief that, well, some of this is my fault, and I take that culpability, and I understand, like, that it's not my fault, but I'm not going to sit here and say that I am absolved of all blame. But the point of the matter is that aside from the affair, which is the main point of this, I also want to point out that he tried to have me procure, and I use his terminology, have me procure a trans sex worker for him to fuck in Florida. Outside.
You're not a pimp.
Right? And I'm
sorry,
like,
you don't.
It was the moment where I was like,
pimp. Last time I checked, your profile picture does not have a large fuzzy purple hat or a cane in the shape of a $sign. You are not a pimp.
I would really love a giant purple fuzzy hat, though. That would be pretty awesome.
You would probably look really cute in that.
I would look adorable. We'd have to cut antler holes for it, but it would be pretty adorable.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to draw your Sona in a giant purple hat now.
Yes! Helmo hands up in the
air,
yes!
As a fucking pimp.
Sweet.
God damn it.
But, so it was also, like, him trying to have me procure him a sex worker, him going up to Connecticut and then calling me after the fact, drunk as a skunk, and telling me that there was this beautiful blonde sex worker there, and she had driven all the way, not driven, she had taken a bus all the way from New York City to Connecticut to listen to him speak, and how much she wanted to fuck him. and then how he could have done all of that, but he felt like he was in a position where it would be an abuse of my power. I'm holding my hand over my head dramatically, like swooning. And it was just like, he's telling me all these things. And one, he's telling me these things because he wants me to know that he is a hot commodity and that he can get any trim that he wants to, whenever he wants, wherever he wants. And he's doing this partially because he enjoys the power trip and partially because he wants to hurt me. And so he tells me these things, and then it's, you know, it's the Connecticut thing, it's the transgender worker thing, and it's also, again, him saying really nasty things about a sex worker that I visited in Chicago that he then interviewed 2 months later in an article that he stole from me. So, like, it's not just about the affair, it's other problematic behaviors as well. But I think that the main focus for a lot of people that want to throw me under the bus is, well, the affair is your fault too. Which, okay, if you want to fault me for that, fine. I don't give a fuck. But you also have to tackle these other behaviors that are definitely not okay, that are independent of this affair.
And that's why I have throughout this interview called him a predator rather than just a rapist. Because,
exactly.
Yeah, him sleeping with you when you were inebriated and therefore have minimal capacity to consent is super skeevy. Mm-hmm. That was really fucked up for him to do. But I think a lot more important is the continual harassment for you of nudes at every fucking crack of day. The pressure for you to provide more sexual partners for him. The fact that a majority of your guys' conversations were about sex or about how desirable he is. He constantly wanted to make himself seem like he was this jewel of humanity and that you should be so lucky as to know him, let alone to have slept with him.
He was, and the other things that were just below the surface that I didn't touch on in the thread, like how you can look at some of the screen caps that I have in this thread that I specifically start a conversation with, I'm not feeling very well today. I'm feeling depressed. And he just kind of gives an answer of, oh, well, that sucks. Hey, can you send some nudes? Or like, just completely uncaring about this mental duress that I was under at the time. And then on top of that, completely uncaring about the dysphoria that I am feeling both independently of him and because of him, because he's asking me for these things.
Yeah. And then there's that one time he explicitly admitted that he likes telling people, don't forget your parents are going to die.
Oh, yeah.
You'll probably die of cancer by 40. This guy was a dirtbag. It's not even just about, like, the sexual obsession and the objectification. He was a dirtbag in every capacity.
And I have, like, hang on, I'm actually going to pull it up real quick. Please hold. Your interview is important to us.
Again, I do appreciate you wanting to talk about this, because it cannot be easy talking about all the fucking disgusting shit that this man did.
I definitely had to take one of my anxiety medications before this interview.
Absolutely valid, and I hope you've got a joint to smoke after so that you can unwind, because you deserve it at this point.
I cannot smoke, unfortunately. It is bad for my health.
That's valid. Weed's not for everybody. It's definitely for me, but it's not for everybody.
One, I work outside of anarchy stuff. I work in a profession where I will probably be drug tested once I get this new job. And then two, I like edibles more anyway. So, but no, so, we're back. Your interview is important to us. I had, outside of the screenshots that I have already posted, because I had, when this started, after everything, I had to go back through my Signal on my phone and screenshot all of these independently. And so I screenshotted 42 items on my phone, and I still have 13 unreleased screenshots that I just couldn't find a place for in that thread. And all of them are still, like, on a level of one skeeviness to another, like, obviously I posted the skeeviest shit, but the stuff like what I had posted, when somebody was like, oh, well, Dr. Bones just needs to release the entire history of his chat logs. Well, first off, he had deleted all of these messages, so he can't. And two, if he has, like, if you've ever known this guy, like, he's not going to go through a struggle session, which is a Maoist thing that there's Wikipedia articles about that I highly recommend looking up because I don't feel like explaining it. But, like, this guy was saying, oh, well, Dr. Bones should go through this struggle session in order to release all these things. And I was like, okay, if you think that him releasing any of his conversations will even remotely help him at all, you are thinking way too highly of his character. And that was when I posted the thing about how, like, I'll just take it out on some 16-year-olds. I like to say things to them like, don't forget your parents are going to die. You'll probably die of cancer by 40. And I'm sitting here going, Jesus, why would you do that? Like, he was, I think there was at one point he was telling me, I don't remember if I posted this screenshot or not, like, he's telling me, hey, I want to get you something for your birthday. Even though I'm trying to tell him, no, I don't want anything, partially because I don't want to give him my address. And so I'm telling him, I don't want you to give me anything. Don't worry about it. And then he starts telling me that he's going to, like, round up animals in his neighborhood and start holding them hostage and murdering animals if I don't tell him what I want for my birthday. And I'm like, Jesus!
What the fuck?
Right? It's like, leave me alone! Oh, yeah. And it was like this incessantly. And it was a constant, like, him saying not just nasty shit like, oh, hey, give me your nudes, or, oh, hey, do something, but, like, him just saying really fucked up shit. And sometimes he would call me and be like, and tell me about the issues that he was having with his wife, which was always really upsetting to me because it was like, okay, first off, I understand that we're having an affair, and I understand that, like, this is not something, and I would try to tell him all the time, either he needs to go get marriage counseling or he needs to leave his wife. And it wasn't even me saying you need to leave your wife because I wanted to be with him. It was me saying you need to leave your wife because this relationship is unhealthy if you're continuing to do this, or if you're continuing to have these problems and you've been married for like 6 years. And, like, in retrospect, I feel really, really bad for his wife. I felt really bad for his wife through the course of this whole thing, but I felt really bad for his wife after this, especially because I got such a tainted view of her from what he was telling me. Like, he would tell me, oh, well, my wife doesn't know how to drive, and she's never wanted to learn, so I have to carry her around everywhere. I have to take her to work, and I have to take her mother to all of these doctor's appointments, and it just completely eats into my time in order for me to do anything with my writing or to do anything for my Patreon. And I wish that she would be able to take care of herself. But the thing is that, like, she doesn't know how to drive because he's never bothered to teach her how to drive, or he's never bothered to let her borrow the car to learn how to drive. This isn't learned helplessness. This is being in a situation where she doesn't know how to drive because she's never been given the opportunity. Who is supposed to teach her to drive? Her mother, who does not have a driver's license and is a paranoid schizophrenic? Obviously, that is not going to happen. Does not know how to drive either. And it's like, so it wasn't just that Bones' wife didn't know how to drive because she just didn't feel like it. It was that her mother is a paranoid schizophrenic that obviously cannot teach her daughter how to drive, and her husband is the only one with a car. And so it becomes, well, if her husband is using the car, it's very difficult for her to use the car herself to learn how to drive, especially because then it becomes just all of these different issues. And so he would play it up to me like, oh, well, she's just lazy and she doesn't want to do this. Or later on it was, oh, well, this is just learned helplessness and I guess it's my fault. But it's not even either of those things. It's just that you're keeping her helpless so that way she's trapped in this relationship with you. And so I've had a bunch of people come forward after the fact and be like, we want to help Bones' wife. We want to do this for her. How can we help her? And I'm sitting here going like, if you can figure it out, by all means, be my guest. I've held on to some of the money that I've gotten through Cash App because I'm I'm going to keep this so that way I'll be able to transfer it quickly. If we can find a way to get this money to her so that way she could potentially leave him. Because I would really like for this to happen to her, because the shit that her husband does to her on a regular basis is not okay, obviously. And so
he sounds like a really, really bad spouse.
And I've told trusted people, I've told a couple of trusted people on Twitter, here was what her Facebook account was. Here is what phone number that I had for her. If you can contact her at either of these avenues and be able to reach her and be able to work something out with her, then please do. But I was blocked on Facebook, and I think that, and I don't know whether she has that phone number anymore or if she would want to talk to me. I assume that she probably doesn't want to talk to me. I understand that. That's okay. But, I do feel bad for her, and I would like for her to get help if she needs to get help. And if she's listening to this, please get help! Your husband is crazy! But, I haven't been able to get a hold of her. And so when people come at me and say, oh, well, his poor wife, you should feel terrible. I'm like, I already do feel terrible. Trust me. I've got that covered, but thank you for reminding me. It's...
Yeah, the fact that a lot of people are going out of their way to make you feel bad for, being in an abusive relationship because the guy who was abusing you was married, honey, I already feel bad for the other victims. You don't have to tell me to feel like trash.
It's, if I could make anybody feel better about it in any way, then I would do it. But whenever I ask somebody, okay, let's entertain this. I'm an adulteress, which, again, is gendered language. That is not correct. But all right, we'll roll with it for the sake of the hypothetical. What would you like me to do about it? What would you want from me? And they can't give me a straight answer. It's like, what do you want to punish me for? What would be an adequate punishment for this? And they just kind of stutter and stop. And it's like, okay, you want me to be deplatformed? From what? I really don't have a platform to start with. You want me to leave Twitter? Why? Because then, these tweets will go away and this whole thing will go away, and then it's like this never happened? No, I'm not going to... Uh-oh. What was I saying? Shit.
I don't remember.
Talking about Bones' wife and talking about how I felt bad about it, and then I'm pretty sure that I said everything that I did need to say, where it was just, I hope that she gets help. I do want her to get help. I feel bad about what happened, and I even said in my apology, I'm really sorry. And it was one of those moments where I was like, I've got to do what I've got to do here. And
that's completely fair, and I appreciate that you have accepted any and all responsibility for the choices that you made during this affair.
Mm-hmm.
I understand, and anyone who is even the smallest bit sensible can see that, you obviously know that you made some bad decisions too. You're not at fault for what happened to you, but you accept responsibility for your choices anyway, and you're trying to do better.
Yeah.
And you apologized. You're doing your best here.
And
I just think it's stupid that people are still harassing you over it, though.
I went into this at the beginning of all of this, when I sent Bones money through his Patreon. At the highest, when he wrote his apology in big quotations, when he wrote his apology, he talked about how I called at all hours and I never left him alone. The entire reason why I started calling was because I had given to his Patreon $50, I think, because I was very invested in his work. I liked what he was doing, and I did it with the intention of I can only do this maybe 1, 2, 3 months before I obviously won't have the money for this anymore. But this was during a time when I had a more steady job and I was able to do this. And so at that level of his Patreon, he had said, I will give you a phone call and we can talk about whatever. And so we talked on the phone, and he obviously felt very confused. He was at a very like strange place where he was like, I see that you're giving me a lot of money, but what do you want? And it made sense to me. If somebody is monetizing you at that level, they might, want something from you. Like they might want to censor your content, or they might want you to focus on very specific content. And that's why I told him at the time, I don't want anything from you except to be your friend. And even then, I didn't mean that in the sense that I want you to call me always, and I want, like, he makes it out like I was some sort of fucking stalker. No, I said I want to be your friend in the sense that, like, I want to be able to help you further your career. And he took the meaning of friendship to be something completely different. He had the assumption that I, didn't want a romantic relationship at that one point, but I wanted a relationship with him. And it was, no, I just told you that I wanted to be your friend, because I don't want you to think that I'm doing this, or I'm giving you this money with the intention of me being like skeevy in some way, which is ironic given what happened later. But I don't want you to think that I'm being skeevy in some way, that I am giving you this money with the intent of, oh, by the way, you can only publish these sorts of articles from now on because I'm giving you this money. And then, after the 3 months of me being able to donate to him were up, and I told him, hey, I can't do this anymore. It's been really nice talking to you, but I understand that, this was a Patreon thing and it's not going to happen anymore. He continued to call me and said that the money wasn't the reason he wanted to talk to me, and that he still wanted to be friends, which I was like, oh, cool, awesome. It's always great to have contacts in the field that you're working in. I work in performance and I work in writing, and one of the biggest and most important things in both of those is the skill of being able to network. If you network with other performers, absolutely, and you network with other writers, then you will probably get work. It's not a one man is an island sort of scenario.
Oh, definitely. That's why I network with other YouTubers. I'm constantly talking to other people on the platform.
Mm-hmm. So that was literally the start of our relationship. The start of any sort of relationship that I had with him was started from, I want to support your work. I am a fan of your work. I wasn't a groupie. I didn't try to stalk him. And I sent him a package over Christmas, specifically after I asked him, would it be okay for me to send you this? And he said, okay, sure, no problem. And he sent me a package back. We exchanged Christmas presents. Him trying to say that, oh, well, the packages that they sent were, like, so numerous. Like, he brings it up in this apology. Like, hang on, I have it. He specifically says just a fragment of a sentence in his apology, the packages they sent. Like, first off, I only sent 2, as I said, and the second one didn't even arrive, according to him, so I don't know what packages he's talking about. So that was obnoxious.
One of many examples of him being full of shit?
Yeah, pretty much. Hey! Good example, right there. Chalk that one up on the board. We're at quite a few examples. But yeah.
I think that it's more chalk than board at this point.
Yep. Just a wall of white. I didn't know that we have a whiteboard in here. We don't.
Is there anything else you want to say to the listeners? Anything you want to promote? Any messages you have for anyone out there?
Let's see. If you want to follow me on Twitter, my Twitter is Bonhomme Rouleur. I assume that it has probably been linked multiple times throughout this interview in this lovely animation, this lovely background that I'll have behind me. I'm pretending to Vanna White. So I have my Twitter. I have my writing on Gods and Radicals, which is under Prosper Bonhomme. I only have 2 articles published. Hopefully I will be publishing more here in the future. I am currently working on a couple of them that I intend to publish. But other than that, that's mainly what I have going for me right now. Sometimes I write, and sometimes I do fun shit posting on Twitter. I post about trans identity, I post about Romani identity, and I post about chronically ill identity. So that's kind of where I come from. And so yeah, that's pretty much what I do. Constant shit posting. Exciting.
I've said the word valid so many times in this podcast, so I'm afraid to say it again, but that's definitely valid. All of Bond's links, including a link to the Gods and Radicals Twitter, which is the publisher that hosts your publications,
Yes.
will be in the description with everything else that I promised to link, which includes your sex worker anarchist friend. I'm definitely going to be
Crime hooker.
Crime hooker. She sounds like an absolute delight, so I will boost her too.
She absolutely is. I think everybody should follow her. She is also Romani. And she is working on a tarot deck that is a sex worker tarot deck. She has a Patreon for it. Her art is excellent, and it makes me want to cry from joy. And so I recommend that everybody follows her on Twitter as well.
All right, I'm gonna look into that Patreon because I'm a long-term practicing pagan, and I am addicted to tarot decks. I have a problem. Please help me.
I would say that I'm addicted to tarot decks, but tarot decks hate me, and that is a story that is like for the D sides at this point. Let's see what else.
So there's your stuff. There's Gods and Rebels or Gods and Radicals. Crime hooker. Is there anything else you want to boost? Anyone else you want to promote?
Hey, so there's this really great furry artist. Their name is Patchy, and you should commission them. I know that they probably have 15 billion commissions that they have to get done right now, but they're really great, and you should absolutely support them. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're pretty awesome.
Nice. Yeah.
I kill you with kindness, also with laughter. You're gonna
give my diabetes more diabetes.
Delicious. Nutritious. How have I gained... Also, because we've kept track of this throughout the podcast, I am now at 1,573 followers.
Followers in the course of this single recording.
Yep.
Holy shit.
And then we also have the B-sides and the C-sides, which I have been told are going to be well animated. Animaticked, and then those will be available for Patreon supporters and whatnot early, and then also for regular people. I've just decided I'm gonna release them to the rest of the public in March. Yes, excellent. So wait and see those. That'll be fun. And then yeah, so awesome. This has been a really fun interview. It's been like 2 hours long, but hopefully the video won't be that long. I assume that the long silences, I assume that the C-sides and the B-sides are definitely going to assist with that. So yeah.
It has been absolutely wonderful interviewing you, and again, I appreciate you being willing to come forward and talk about this, and especially to talk about it on my channel, because I am still a very small bean. I only have about like 1,100 subscribers.
You know, I was really happy that you came forward and asked me if I wanted to do this, and I appreciate being interviewed by you. This has been a fun experience. Even with the serious topics, it's been a nice experience, and I definitely would enjoy doing this more often. Maybe not this subject matter, but...
Yeah, that's perfectly fair. This is a discussion you should only ever really have to have once.
Hopefully.
But I would definitely love to have you on Serious Talk again in the future to cover more broad subjects, because you are an absolute delight.
Aw, thank you.
I have faith that my subscribers will enjoy this video, or at the very least, feel informed, because you have been incredibly articulate and entertaining throughout the entire thing.
Thank you. One more thing to plug real quick. I don't know if we can slide this in somewhere. Also, just about 13 minutes ago, while we were recording this, the Guillotine has released an announcement about the final, like they did a final transcript, and it's only 10 minutes long, and basically it's a transcript that says that the Guillotine has been canceled. Please support Rev Left Radio and all of their other ventures and whatever Brett decides to start up in the wake of the Guillotine. And please continue to support his work, because Brett is also super important and a really great member of the leftist community, and he does deserve to have a platform, and I appreciate everything that he's done. So.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to link to the Rev Left podcast family of shows in the description, because they are awesome, and the Guillotine was definitely entertaining for me.
Yep, the Guillotine was an entertaining show. It sucks that one of their hosts happened to be a giant shitlord.
Yeah, yeah, it sucks that he's a dick waffle.
Wangrod. A twat stick? Twat stick.
Shit biscuit?
That's a good one. Douche canoe.
Oh, I love douche canoe.
Yes. So yeah, on that lovely note, it was nice talking to you all.
It was nice talking to you too. Everybody go support Bond's content in the description down below, and I will see you guys in February, because I'm taking the rest of the month off to deal with personal shit. Bye-bye.
If I could change my ways, if I could change the rule of the time, would it still be the same? Would I still fade away with the time? To be a king of kings, and how long will it last this time? Would it still be the same? And all things fade away. So could you tell